Okay, now we talk about stress process, how we feel stress, and the stress will cause what to our body. Okay, first of all, stress, like we mentioned in the definition, is the emotional or physical tension that we feel. Okay, before we feel this way, there are factors which will cause us, which will make us feel in those way. We call that stressor. Okay, and then this stressor will make us feel tension, will makes us feel pressured, and later will cause strain. Okay, which is the effects of the stress on our body, on our emotion, and on our thinking. Okay, first of all, let's look at the stressor. Okay, there are many types of stressor that can cause us to feel stress. Okay, we can categorize those factors into three: biological, psychological, and social stressors. Okay, these three types can always cause us to feel tension, to feel pressured, to feel stress when we are facing certain situation, when we are facing certain people, when we are thinking about something. Okay, what is biological? It's all about factors which is physiological, which is inside of us. Okay, sometimes we can't even change about that. Okay, such as disability, physical health, immunity. Okay, those are examples of biological factors that could cause us to feel stress. Okay, psychological, like we discussed in previous classes. Okay, self-esteem, type of our personality, attitudes. These are the examples of psychological factors that may influence why we or certain people feel stress. And thirdly, social factors, okay, such as family, friends, peers, social economic status, okay, our working environments, our place of staying. Those are all social environmental factors that may influence or may cause us to feel stress. Okay, there are a perspective which is the biopsychosocial approach that explained we feel stress not because of one singular factor. Instead, we feel stress because there are interaction between several factors that may cause us to feel tension, to feel stress, to feel pressured, okay, to feel anxious. Okay, so what's the meaning of biopsychosocial factors? Okay, as the name stands, bio refer to biological factors, psycho refer to psychological factors, social refers to social environmental factors. According to this perspective, why we feel stress? Not because only psychological, okay, not because only we have low self-esteem, okay, not because only we have low self-concepts, but because of the interaction. There are other factors besides low self-esteem. At the same time, we don't have enough social support. Okay, we don't have friends who support us, we don't have family members who support us, and then we are staying in environments whereby people are looking at us in a negative way. Okay, and then in terms of biological, we could have a history of depression, history of stress, or we could have a several genetic tendency. Okay, we have family members, for example, who have this high tendency to feel stressed or depressed. Okay, not only low self-esteem. If you only have low self-esteem but have enough social support, you may not feel stressed. But according to this perspective, stress happens because of the interactions between psychological factors and social and environmental factors and biological factors. The example that are given here, for example, biological, physical health, metabolic disorders, neurochemistry, genetic vulnerability, immune or stress response, comorbidity, okay, response to drug effects or diet, lifestyle. So those are basically the examples of biological factors that may interact with psychological factors such as self-esteem, attitudes and beliefs, coping skills, perceptions, temperaments, and social skills. And these only not only interacted with psychological, but could also interacted with social environmental factors, okay, such as peers group, school, work, socio-economic status, family circumstances, as well as our culture. In certain culture, for example, people are not allowed or not encouraged to express or to be expressive about their feelings, to share with others about their problems. Okay, in this certain situation, in this culture, it could be people may have high tendency to feel stress because they are not allowed or they are not encouraged to share their problems. Okay, the main point is the biopsychosocial approach emphasizes that stress is the result of the interaction between psychological, biological, and social environmental factors. Okay, now we have three factors that interacted. Okay, biological, psychological, and social environmental factors. The question is, how about spiritual factors? Okay, is there any effects between spiritual factors and stress? Is there no effects between spiritual factors and stress? Okay, if you may remember the first discussion when we talk about why psychology interested in adjustment and adaptation, okay, how the two field, adaptation and adjustment, combine to become psychology of adjustment. Okay, psychology itself is systematic understanding of human behavior and mental process. Okay, so how can we understand about human behavior is through understands the cognitive, okay, the biological, okay, and then the environments, as well as the history, and then the biological makeup. And all of these are considered in order for us to understand one simple behavior. Okay, however, if you look at the history of psychology, when psychology started to become a science, scientists or psychologists have started to differentiate or to opt out or to reduce the influence of spiritual or religiosity or spirituality in understanding human behavior. Why? Because according to them, spiritual factors is very difficult to understand. Okay, and those perspective, those understandings has developed until now. However, there are awareness and they are starting to have more evidence on the impacts of spiritual therapy or therapy based on religious belief, therapy based on spiritual practice. Spiritual here doesn't mean that they believe in something magical, but something based on religious values and religious norms. Okay, so there are evidence that shows that people who have high faith and follow or adhere religiously with their practice, with their values, on their beliefs, they shows improvement in terms of stress, okay, or they have less stress. So there are spiritual factors in that, but not about spiritual or something magical that can cause us to feel stress, but the other way around. Okay, when you want to treat people who experience stress or depression, besides we control for their psychological factors, besides we help them to handle or to manage their social environmental factors, and besides we look at their biological factors, we also admit or recognize that some religious practice can help people to reduce their stress. Okay, so now we have the stressor. Okay, all of the factors that make us feel stressful, that makes us feel tension. So what are the effects of this tension? What are the effects of these unpleasant feelings, which is the strains? Okay, the effects of stress. Okay, strains can, similar like the stressor, can be in the forms of physical, can be in the forms of psychological, can be in the forms of behavioral. Okay, when people prolong experiencing excessive stress, do not handle their stress, do not treat their stress, they will feel headache. Okay, they have pain. Okay, and mostly reported have sleep problems, and later it develops into so many kinds of illness. Okay, that's on the physical parts. Beside physical effects, stress could also give psychological effects, okay, such as anxiety. Okay, they unnecessarily feel anxious, they afraid of everything, afraid of situation, afraid of environment, afraid of people. Okay, and then they reported to experience depression. Okay, depressed about themselves, depressed about their situation, loss of hope. Okay, do not know how they can handle themselves, not be able to function normally as a social person, as an individual, as a family members. Okay, beside that, people who experience prolonged stress also reported to show burnout. They no longer have the motivation, they no longer have the inspiration, they no longer have the energy. Okay, they in fact develop something which is disinterest, no longer interested in what they were doing before, even though those activities have been an enjoy or an activity that they relax or they like the most previously. Okay, people who experience stress could also get triggered or get angry, being emotional. And then the other part that we can always observe, people who experience stress, they demonstrate in terms of eating. Okay, similar to me, if I feel stressed, there are two things that I do. Okay, it's either I eat or I sleep. Okay, so those are basically signs or symptoms of people who experience stress. Binge eating, they eat more or way more than they used to eat. Okay, smoking, people who don't smoke or people who smoke socially, and when they feel stressed, they will smoke excessively. Okay, and then aggression, they show their aggression towards people in terms of language, in terms of verbal, in terms of physical, in terms of body gesture. Okay, they shows aggression. And then worst case scenario, people abuse. Okay, they goes to the stage whereby they try to find extra or external factors that could make them calm down, such as substance abuse. So they are very important or dangerous risk of process of excessive feeling of or stress, or prolonged feeling of stress. Okay, so now how can we manage our stress? First of all, before we be able to manage our stress, we need to be able to recognize that we felt it. Okay, we feel the stress, we feel the tension. Okay, because of what? Sometimes people instead of delusion, or in a way that they don't admit that they are basically stressful. Okay, they are basically in the state that they can no longer tolerate with the work, they can no longer tolerate with the schedule, they can no longer tolerate with deadlines. Okay, first of all, why we learned about psychological health, why we learn about stress, basically before we can help other people, we need to understand when we ourselves feel stress. Okay, when you know that you feel stress, these are some of the techniques that we can help, that can help us to manage our stress. Okay, first of all, relaxation. You need to relax, you need to take breath and breathe, you need to breathe deep. Okay, relax yourself. Okay, go out to the open spaces, don't stay in a cocoon or in a very small places. Go there and try to relax. Okay, you can search a lot of relaxation techniques, breathing techniques, for example. Even we can pray, okay, or some of you can meditate, and then always look at the positive sides. Okay, what are the positive outcome that can come out from that situation? On top of that, like we discussed previous class, okay, how can we manage our stress is basically to manage our time management. You need to be effective in managing your times. Okay, no procrastination, cannot delay. Okay, cannot, don't attend your important task first and let it goes to the times whereby you don't have enough time to sleep, enough times to do it, or enough time to complete it, which later on will always add up. Okay, enhance or give more pressure to ourselves. Okay, and then we need to understand the priority. Okay, what are the things that we need to prioritize first? Okay, always use the techniques that we discussed. Okay, the techniques, the strategies, so that we'll be able to perform what are the most important things first. Okay, so now we know, okay, how or when we feel stress, and then we know some technique for us to relieve the stress, so to manage the stress. Okay, now for us to relieve the stress, okay, these are the basic things. Okay, when we feel stress, okay, go and do exercise. Go and do exercise, go and do social activities, go and do talk to your friend, laughing, okay, talking something which is not about work, okay, which is not about pressure. Talk about leisure things that will make you feel calm, okay, will make you feel relaxed, will make you forget about those things. You may question, if you go there, then how your works are going to get done. Okay, there are a lot of work to be done, so there are a lot of commitments, there are a lot of deadlines, but if you go to do these things, it's going to cost you more time. Okay, you have to bear in mind, exercise, okay, is very important. It's not only because of your weight, it's not only because of your looks, but when you exercise, your body will release endorphins. Okay, endorphins is basically hormones in our mind. When we do physical activities, okay, do exercise, it will release into our body and it acts as natural painkiller. Okay, so all of the pressure that we feel will temporarily be released. Okay, it will give us more calming situation, more calming states. It will elevate our mood, okay, control our moods. We no longer feel so pressured, we no longer feel so emotional. Okay, when we go for exercise, beside this endorphin, what it can give us, it will let us able to sleep properly. Okay, all of us have experienced that if you go to exercise, play some sports in the afternoon or in the morning, you will be able to sleep better at night. Okay, it gives us relief from our stress. But of course, remember about time management. Okay, it's not that you cannot do it at all, but you also need to manage it, not too excessive, so that you don't have times to perform your important task. Okay, so how can we cope with stress? Okay, how can we cope with stress? This is one of the techniques, okay, one of the models, very famous, is 1984, okay, on still being applied until now. Lazarus-Folkman transactional stress model, how Lazarus and Folkman explained what we do when we feel or we are in a situation that we experience stress. Before I go further, let's watch some clip.
The transactional stress model is one of my favorite models because it shows how much stress is a lot about perception. Of course, there are things that are stressful, there can be some external factors that are difficult, but internal factors, the way you think, that's also important. So for example, with the transactional model from Lazarus, yeah, it says that when we're faced with a difficult situation, we make an assessment, you know, is there a threat here or not? If we assess that there's no threat, if this situation is not that difficult, if it's something we can cope with, then no problem. But if we assess that it's a threat, then the next phase of assessment comes in. And the first one is we have to check that we can cope, you know. Either we cope or we don't cope. So first we can say we're coping, or number two, we say we're not coping. If we say we're coping, then no problem. Everything cruises fine. In fact, it can be positive stress. It can give some growth. But if we say we're not coping, that's when stress kicks in. That's when this strain comes in. That's when the battery becomes more and more drained until it runs out of juice, and we're going to find it difficult to cope. So negative stress comes about because firstly, we assess a situation as stressful, but secondly, we also assess that our ability to cope with it is limited. We find it overwhelming. We don't think we can cope. And this gives some fascinating opportunities actually, because I always encourage people, so if you're going to work on reducing your stress, there's two levels. The one is to look at the situation. Are there things I can change in this situation that it no longer needs to become a threat? Or can I work with myself? And there's some things that I can do to give me the ability to cope. Even just the perception of having the ability changes things. So maybe someone's sitting there and nothing's changed, but just suddenly you're sitting there with this psychologist, like I often do with people, and help them to see, actually, you've coped with something like this before, you're probably going to cope again. And give them that motivation, give them that encouragement to say, okay, give this a shot, you can do it. Immediately something happens. Because even though maybe they assess the situation as difficult, they actually now assess that they have enough resources to cope with it. Therefore, stress is reduced. So that's the transactional model from Lazarus and Folkman.
Okay, so that is basically a transactional model of stress, okay, introduced or developed by Lazarus and Folkman. Okay, so in this model, okay, what is the important is they involve two levels of appraisal. What appraisal means here? Appraisal means judgment or evaluation from ourselves whether we can handle the situation or we cannot handle the situation. Okay, so give you the example. When you go to a situation or when you be in a situation, so situation requires response. Okay, and then say for example you are coming to my class. Okay, you're coming to my class, and then I inform all of the class that you need to do an assignment. Okay, an individual assignment requires you to collect data from 100 respondents or participants. Okay, at these situations, okay, first of all is involve first appraisal, or what we call primary appraisal. In this situation, you will evaluate whether you can handle or whether you can manage the situation. If say for example, okay, I've done it before, it's normal, like normal assignments that I've done before, so I can do it. Okay, when you perceive that there is no threats to you, there is no problem with the assignments, then basically the situation is perceived as not stressful. Okay, so basically there is no stress. Okay, you can handle the assignment, it's normal, you have done it every semester. On the other hand, when you heard about the assignments, when you heard about the task, you feel that it's too much. Okay, you have other assignments from other subjects. Okay, this is basically just a general subject, not supposed to have this kind of assignments, not supposed to have this kind of commitment. Okay, for example, so you perceive that you are going to struggle, you are going to have problems dealing with the assignment. So it goes to the second lane. Okay, in the second lane, okay, it's involved secondary appraisal. Okay, secondary appraisal. Okay, secondary appraisal again is involved secondary judgment. Okay, the primary judgment about the situation. Okay, most of the time we cannot change the situation. Okay, if you are in the place of power where you can change the situation, then it's okay. But most of the times we're not in the position that we can change the situation. So when this goes that, okay, there is a problem, there is a threat, so it comes to secondary appraisal. Okay, in this we evaluate whether we have the ability, whether we are able to cope with the demands of the assignments or not. Okay, we evaluate whether we are capable or we are not capable. Okay, whether we can cope or we cannot cope, whether we can handle or we cannot handle. Okay, if we perceive that we have the ability, okay, we have the capability to manage, to handle the assignments, then it's not going to cause us negative stress. Okay, it will become eustress. Okay, the positive stress of that kind that can give us motivation, that can persuade us, that can push us to perform better. However, okay, when you think that you are not capable to handle the assignments, when you think that the assignment is not supposed to be given, when you think that you will not be able to achieve the deadlines or to produce the report, or not to be able to understand to do anything, okay, basically it will give a negative stress, distress. Okay, will cause you problems. Okay, so in this secondary appraisal, okay, and then as well as in the whether you perceive it as a negative stress or positive stress, it's always involve coping. Okay, when you feel stress, the negative stress, how can you cope with the stress? Okay, we talked about this in previous class. Okay, the problem focus and the emotion focus, remember? Okay, so the John and Jennifer story. Okay, so you can cope with the stress. Okay, there are another type of coping, which is avoidance. It's not going to be useful. Okay, but problem focus, when you have the problems, okay, when you face those situations, so how can you solve the problem? So you are thinking and committing effort and commitment to solve the problem. That is problem focused coping. Okay, sometimes it involves seeking advice from the others. Okay, you don't avoid the problems. Okay, you try to solve the problem, you try to find the solutions. Okay, you try to seek advice and guidance from people so that you are capable to handle the problems. Okay, and then there's another types of coping, which is emotion focus. Okay, when the problem is there, okay, is whether by hook or by crook, you need to face that. Okay, what you can do is basically to reduce the feelings of stressful, fear or anger or anxious in yourself, reducing unpleasant emotion. Okay, take our mind off the problems, to calm down, to relax. Okay, so we may think carefully later after we calm ourselves down. When in a stressful situation, most of the time we are not able to think properly. Why? Because we are so emotional. Okay, that's why in emotion focused techniques, we try to calm down first. Okay, try to calm down and then reattempt to think about the problems and the solution. Of course, in the long run, emotion focus may not be effective. Okay, ineffective, especially in long-term condition. Okay, but you can combine both. Okay, when you face stressful events, you feel anxious, you feel frustrated, you feel angry, use emotion focus first. Calm yourself down. Okay, relax. When you are able to calm yourself down, you are able to think straight, and then start to attempt on problem focus. Okay, how to solve the problems. Okay, so those are basically everything about psychological health that we need to understand. Okay, in a nutshell, we have discussed about the definition of psychological health, which is similar to the conception of mental health. And then we talk about two types of stress, eustress and distress. And then we spoke about how stress related to performance. Okay, we do require some optimal level of stress. Okay, otherwise we're going to be lazy, we're going to be laid back, we're going to be too relaxed. Okay, we're going to procrastinate. But if we have too much of stress, okay, over the moon, okay, too much, we're going to feel exhausted. Okay, we are going to have anxiety, we're going to develop psychological problems. Okay, worse, we're going to feel burnt out when there are too much of stress. Okay, and then we talk about the stress process, stressor, stress and strains, the causal factors. Okay, factors that may makes us feel stressed. And then when we feel stress, what the effects of those stress, okay, the strains, okay, on the physical, on the emotional, as well as on the thinking. So what on our behavioral. So those are basically the effects of stress on ourselves. And then how can we manage our stress? Okay, how can we manage our stress? Through relaxations and through time management. How can we release our stress? Okay, relieve it. Okay, we can go for exercise, we can go for social activities. Okay, we can go and watch nowadays we have a lot of funny or jokes, or sepatu reunion or anything else that can make us laugh. Okay, and end of the day, how we can cope with the stress. Okay, the Lazarus model. Okay, how appraisal involved in two stages. Okay, appraisal, judgment involved at primary levels and at the secondary levels. Okay, when we are not able to think that we can solve it, we can face it, it will always give us the negative stress and cause us strains. Okay, basically those are what we need to understand and what we need to know about psychological health in psychology of adjustment. Okay, the last word from William James, one of the psychologists: the greatest weapon against stress is our ability to choose one thought over another. Okay, with that, thank you very much, okay, for watching this video. Please make your revision, because I'm going to give you some other quizzes in the next classes. Okay, thank you very much. See you soon.